dates. 20 seconds too late for the auditor, because the auditor comes and starts their process. And the 7th is too early, so it's like a.
Yeah,
You asked that at agenda.
the agenda committee. I just wanted to see if we.
Diane had identified it.
We've got full attendance here with myself, Councillor Kellick, and Councillor Broadhead in attendance. We also have Councillor Brumatsky and Mayor Erin and Councillor Mackay here. So I'll call the meeting to order. On that, if there are no issues with the agenda, could I get a motion to adopt that as presented? Any takers? Councillor Kellick.
Motion to adopt the agenda as published.
That's what you need.
It's presented.
As presented.
Okay.
Or
Thank you. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thanks, Wes.
I can use the reactions if you wish.
Yeah, hand was good. I think all these are going to be in favor, so it'll be pretty easy.
All right.
Your shocked face reaction.
At the agenda. No appointments today, as far as I know. And next up is our minutes from November 22nd. It's been a while. Any issues? Any issues with that? No?
You want a motion?
Sure. Erin, you going to do that?
Yeah, that the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee minutes of November 22nd, 21 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. All right. Next up, we've got EScooter program updates with Mr. McCauley. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to share my screen. Okay, great. On August 16th, 2021, sorry, I just want to, there we go. On August 16th, 2021, Council passed a motion for administration to develop specialized conditions for business licenses issued to e-scooter businesses, to regulate the licenses, and to support the implementation of an e-scooter pilot project to conclude at the end of 2022. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an update with information regarding the e-scooter pilot program, which began in September of 2021. Information and stats regarding the program's first few months has been compiled by administration for review by the committee. In designing the pilot, administration conducted research of municipalities in Alberta with e-scooter programs. This was followed by interdepartmental collaboration to apply best practice from the municipalities to fit St. Albert. For example, Recreation and Parks provided lists of areas to Geo Blocked to prevent e-scooter access, and GIS services generated mapping files to go with these geo-blocked areas for e-scooter businesses to implement through their software. The pilot program was approved with the following regulations being imposed through traffic bylaw amendments and conditions on business licenses. No limits on the amount of licensed scooter companies or available e-scooters. Users were required to be at least 16 years of age and to wear a helmet. E-scooters may be used on sidewalks or trails only. E-scooters may not be used in transit zones or at a transit center, at special events or inside buildings. E-scooters may be geo-blocked must be geo-blocked from accessing certain areas such as BMX Park and Woodland Skate Park. E-scooters must be parked in the furniture zone. As an example, boulevard areas where street furniture like street lamps, trees, and signs are located. And e-scooter companies must remove a parked e-scooter that is parked illegally or has not been rented for over 2 days. For the benefit of the committee, furniture zones is the area that includes streetlights, parking meters, bicycle racks, and areas that act as a buffer between roads and sidewalks or trails. If there is no furniture zone available, e-scooters must be parked in a way that does not prevent movement or block access on sidewalks or trails and into buildings. E-scooters may not be parked in loading zones, accessible parking zones, ramps, bridges, center median islands, or parking spaces. Three e-scooter companies initially expressed interest in participating in the pilot, and in the end, we had 5 companies obtain business licenses to operate in 2021. Contact information for each company was uploaded to a city webpage where residents could report e-scooter issues directly to the company through their related app or through contact details on the webpage. Many residents still contacted business licensing, municipal enforcement services, or the general city inbox to report e-scooter issues, with the majority of residents inquiring to the city to relate misparked e-scooters or to provide feedback with the program. E-scooter companies provided the following stats regarding the use of their fleets in St. Albert. Over 6,000 unique users, just under 12,000 total trips taken, 2.5 was the average trip distance, 330 total e-scooters deployed on average, and 0 reported safety incidents. Of note, the city's enforcement department did not receive or respond to any complaints regarding bylaw infractions related to e-scooters. With respect to resident feedback, 51 direct messages were provided to business licensing, 10% positive, 41% mixed, and 49% negative. Residents were able to provide feedback to the city through the dedicated Cultivate the Conversation webpage, a survey, and directly by phone or email to the business licensing department. 23 residents completed the survey, which was promoted through the City Lights newsletter and social media. 52% supported the availability of e-scooters in St. Albert, and 48 did not. Administration will pursue further engagement and outreach to residents over the course of 2022 with the goal of generating more responses. Some of the common feedback points were helmets. Many residents felt that making helmets mandatory defeated the purpose of e-scooters, as they don't carry helmets around with them just in case they decide to use one. Some suggested making it recommended or only required for children. Aesthetics. The majority of negative feedback surrounded the aesthetics of e-scooters. Many residents reported them being left on trails, boulevards, and sidewalks. Safety. Many residents were also concerned about safety issues, specifically with how e-scooters interacted with other pedestrians and traffic. Many felt that sidewalks and trails are already too crowded with other pedestrians and bikes. And parking, e-scooter parking. Residents also expressed a desire to have parking corrals or dedicated spaces where e-scooters that are not in use must be parked to prevent them from being left abandoned in various places throughout the city. Currently, the pilot program is scheduled to end in December of this year. If this report is accepted as information, the current regulations will apply for when e-scooter fleets return this spring or summer, which is weather dependent. A data analytics software will be employed in 2022 to provide an opportunity for a deeper dive into tracking e-scooter usage. And administration will return to council with a summary report and recommendations on whether or not to make the pilot program permanent in early 2023. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. All right, so any questions? Yeah, Councillor Kellick, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Jolly. Sean, how is Geo Blocked? What does that actually mean, and how does it work?
Sure. Through the chair, it's basically, and I use the example of the golf carts on a golf course, where basically it just doesn't allow you to go any further. The only reason I use the golf course as an example is because I'm usually all over the place and not able to access where my ball is. So it's kind of the same idea where we set up parameters to say, there's no access to, say, the BMX park. It literally just puts the brakes on and slows you to a halt. And so that was some collaboration, obviously, internally to work with these businesses to have their mapping done to not allow the scooters to access certain areas.
The data analytics software, is that something St. Albert's developing, or is that like a big fancy spreadsheet, or is it more than that?
Sure. No, it would be, I mean, ultimately the information, I picture it as being exported into spreadsheets to be able to really break down some of this data. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're only able to access the information that the companies will provide to us. And so, as we look at this program and say, is this a viable transportation solution for the city? We want to have a deeper dive into some of these analytics and just be able to really identify, where they're being used and maybe some of the demographics within who's using them. And that'll help us, putting together more of a case, when we bring this back to council to say, should this program be permanent? So it's going to allow us to do a deeper dive into some of that data.
And just last question, the designated parking spots sound great, and you always see the scooters dropped off by the company after they've been collected and recharged in their little zones. But how do we work with them to ensure, like, you see scooters left randomly all over the place, and I assume that that's because the prepaid amount runs out and they just get left in that location along a trail, or quite weird locations. Is that what's happening, that the money just on that card or what they paid for just runs out and that's why they get left there? And
yeah, sorry, through the chair, it's I mean, it would be a scenario of maybe maybe they made it to their destination and it just happened to be a very random position and where they've left it. To my understanding, the e-scooter companies have been very good once they're notified to come and pick them up, to the maximum of 2 days. Unfortunately, I think the other thing is because it's new, I think we're just not used to seeing them. If it was a bicycle perchance laying there, we might not notice it as much, with it being something a little different and new. Of course, it stands out. And but no, the companies have been good to come pick them up. My understanding through the business licensing department that we haven't had any issues there. And of course, with it being regulated, we are able to withdraw their license, of course, too. So, and then the other piece too is we're going to be doing a lot more work with our comms team. We want to be able to get the message out there and get a very good understanding out to the residents. A lot of the missing piece sometimes within this is some of the educational piece behind it. And so, of course, we have a plan going forward here to work very close with our communications department to make sure we get the appropriate messaging out.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Birmanski and then Councillor Broadhead.
Oh, I have 3 questions actually. So it was mentioned to me that the companies have to be notified before they'll pick them up within 2 days. So I've had citizens complain that they have to make the phone call to actually get them picked up. Why is there not a tracking device that they know where their equipment is and they can just, have it picked up rather than a citizen having to make that call?
Through the chair, that's a great question. That's something we can definitely bring back to the businesses because, of course, with it being geo-tracked, they should be able to see where an e-scooter is and how long it's been there. I guess the other part too is maybe under capacity. I'm not sure if they're able to respond in a quicker manner than 2 days, and maybe that's how we've landed on that as well. So definitely something I'll take away to see if there can be a quicker response to something like that.
Okay, and then the next question is, why was there no limit on the number of companies that were approved? Was there not enough through a certain company, or?
So Councillor Birmanski, I can kind of address it. So that was decided at the council level, and I don't know from a Kyer.
No, I mean, it was when it came forward to council, it was a matter, we initially were approached by one company to basically have sole rights, but we just did not feel that that was appropriate or proper, and that if we were going to have one company, we should have open it up to everybody, particularly as we were only going to run it as a pilot just to see the acceptance level. So I don't think anybody anticipated that we would get as many companies as we have, and it's yet to be seen if they all decide to come back in the springtime. But that was kind of the thinking behind it at the time. Rather than favor one company, we decided we would open it up to any company operating a scooter as long as they followed the conditions of business licensing and pilot project.
Thanks, Councillor McKay. Your memory's better than mine.
Thank you. So my other question with the two relating is, are some companies picking up sooner than the others? So I don't know if there's any data on that or not.
Through the chair, I just know that they've been able to meet the capacity of 2 days. I'm not certain, and I would have to get back to you on that one if it's happening sooner than that. I mean, the only kind of flag that we have is if it's gone past 2 days. But I can look and see if there is some sort of data that says on average how quickly they are being picked up and addressed. To my knowledge, I don't think we tracked that currently, but I can definitely look and see.
Okay, I appreciate that. And one quick last question. It was also mentioned that when the scooters come into a new area, they traditionally get vandalized in the early days. So if a certain percentage of them get damaged, do they keep running those vehicles, or are they replacing them? Or is it a loss to the company, or do they just kind of get run down looking after a period of time?
Through the chair, that's also another good question. I'm not certain. I would like to think that it's in the company's best interest to have a full fleet and to have everything maintained up to a certain standard. So my understanding is that anything that's vandalized, they are picking up and addressing. But again, that's another one that I can bring back. And I can make it part of the recommendation as well when we come back. With this being a pilot, we are trying to keep our eye on some of the different the different flags. And so if we find that it's being damaged and vandalized, and of course looking like pollution, for instance, on the streets, then we will make that as part of the recommendation when it comes back.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Go ahead, Wes.
Thank you, and thanks for the questions, Councillor Bermansky and Councillor Kellick. Just a question around, so the feedback that I got with the people that I spoke to over the last year basically revolve around the three that you've noted. My question is that, so if the bylaw says they have to be 16 and older, are we suggesting then that that there needs to be a distinct account for every scooter rented? And what begs the question is this idea of helmets for children only? And if you have to be 16 to ride the thing in the first place, it seems like it doesn't seem to make sense that we would allow children to ride if they have a helmet. So I don't know how you reconcile those two positions. Any thoughts on that?
Through the chair, it's I know that in the early stages, and there was some collaboration with working with the traffic bylaw to try and align it, because I think there was an approach of trying to find some consistency. And that's, I think, where that was derived from. And so we just made it a kind of an easy approach that way to say, okay, this is how we're going to, if we enforce bicycles in our bylaws this way, then we'll stay with the consistency within the scooters. And I know that our enforcement department was also using it more as an educational approach as well. And so I think that worked really well. I don't know. I don't have a recommendation at the moment as to changing it. I don't know if I have a better solution than what we have. And so I think that it's one of those ones where, as we run the course this year, this is something that we can definitely identify to bring back in the recommendations as well. And it gives council an opportunity also to hear from residents throughout the year.
So I guess the follow-up is to that. So if I wanted to take, say, 3 of my older grandchildren, but all are under 16, could I rent 3 or 4 of them and all under my card, so to speak? And is that allowed? I don't know whether it's allowed in St. Albert, but in a wider expression of that, is that allowed?
Through the chair. First off, that's a very cynical view on this. To try and it's a pretty good loophole you might have found there. I believe that you have to have an individual account per scooter. Yeah. I'm not. I know I have Monty on the call with me. I don't want to throw him under the bus, or if Mike wanted to help me on this one as well, but my understanding is that you need to be a unique user, that you would have to have your own app to be able to do it. I don't think that it would allow you to do multiple scooters under the same account, but that's my understanding.
Okay. I don't mean to be cynical about it. It's just a matter of if I'm going out as a family, I was wondering if I could do it. And quite honestly, my 10-year-old would probably be safer on this thing than me.
A 50-year-old mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Broadhead, anecdotally, I know that families are doing that, or were doing that last fall. So I have friends who would get it for their 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
I also saw parents riding like tandem. So like having the parent and the kid on one scooter, which I'm sure, I'm looking at Monty's face right now. So not allowed, but it's definitely happening in St. Albert.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, growing pains. And that's why I really like the idea of an additional summer of sort of experimenting to see what actually works in place here. But yeah, just and then the last question, and I know, Mike, you asked the question around geofencing. How discreet is that? So one of the things that I find somewhat disconcerting is how fast people ride their bicycles on sidewalks. And I mean, if you're doing 35 kilometers an hour or 40 kilometers an hour on a bike, and you come upon a group of pedestrians, you know, it's a little bit of a opportunity for disaster there. And if you're riding your bike, this e-scooter at 30 kilometers an hour, same situation occurs. So my question is, can you geofence it so that on sidewalks alone, it can be like 10 kilometers an hour? And then once they get onto side roads, it can go up to 30 or whatever the maximum.
15.
Sure. Through the chair, I'm not certain. I mean, I want to maybe take this one back. I don't know if Monty has a response to this one, because I just know that he worked very closely with the.
I think Mayor Erin knows the answer.
They totally can. So if you ride in one in Calgary, you can go, I don't know, 15 kilometers an hour. But as soon as you hit Stevens Ave, which is a pedestrian street, it governs it down to like 8 kilometers an hour. So, and it just happens. You just say, whoa, slow down. So they know exactly where you are, and they can set the speed limit on any road. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Those are my questions anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. So I don't think you answered this, and if you did, please forgive me. But how difficult would it be to set up those like specific locations for drop off and pick up, or drop off and pick up? Because one of the major complaints has been from people who kind of feels like they're everywhere, like every bus stop has them. People just leave them in front of people's yards. I understand that there's the 2-day delay, but then you also have the clutter in front of your house for 2 days when you didn't ask for it. So how difficult would it be for us to incorporate it where there would be specific pickup and drop off locations in each neighborhood so that people would know where they were and we wouldn't have that extra issue?
Sure. Through the chair, it's. Sorry, one second. The one advantage I would say to being able to I guess not regulate it that way is it would allow us to be to know where they're being used more frequently as well. I guess it would be like, as we're looking into more of the data and more of the tracking, it would be a way of almost saying, okay, we're able to identify and have a better understanding of where they're being used. And that was kind of the approach initially with it. And I think that like as far as if we were to regulate it that way, I think we could have something done internally. We would obviously connect with multiple internal departments to see what that would take. We haven't gone that approach, so I don't have an answer on that one at the moment. But yeah, it was more of using this as a bit of an audition, just to see some of the movements with it, and then just keeping them available everywhere, just have a better understanding of where they were being used. And so that's something that we can definitely keep in mind for bringing back as well. But that was the approach on this one.
Okay, I understand why we didn't do it. But what I'm trying to figure out is, so you're telling me you don't really have that answer yet, because regardless of what happens at the committee level, I think this needs to be a discussion at the council level. So if no one else does, I'm prepared to put forward a motion when it comes to council, because I'm not on this committee, unless someone does in the committee today, to implement it where there are specific drop-off and pickup stations. And that way I don't think that really interferes personally in people using it. I think that if they have to go an extra 2 blocks to drop it off instead of just dropping off in front of somebody's house, that's not really going to impede knowing how and where and when people are using it. But it would allow the random distribution of these things when people are done with them to be dealt with. And the constant, I got to pick up something because it's the calls to pick it up plus the 2-day delay. I think that's really impacting a lot of the negative comments that we're getting. And if we could just conglomerate them, I think it'd make a very big difference. And when this pilot came forward, I was under the mistaken impression, I didn't ask, but I just assumed there would be a specific rental starting an endpoint. And then when we started seeing them everywhere, I was really surprised that we were just allowing them to basically be dropped off at every bus station and having people leave them wherever they felt like it. So as a heads up, if this isn't brought forward today, I will be bringing it forward when it comes to council. So that's why I'm asking you how difficult it would be for you to implement that. So I think it needs to be done. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks. Councillor Mackay, go ahead.
Yeah, just thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I mean, is Sean, any discussion or anything from, or any feedback? I know we got one from one of the companies. Any other feedback as to how the first couple of months went from their perspective?
No, I know that, oh, sorry, through the chair, my apologies. We did reach out. We're still waiting on some of that feedback. We didn't get the response that we thought we might get from the companies on this one, because we are trying to also gauge what we think or what they also think would be a success and a successful program. So no, I don't have that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking, obviously we did get some information from the report. I mean, this must be quite popular. I mean, if you have, even if you can game the system, I mean, on 1 or 2 occasions where you have families that are using them, you have 6,247 unique users. So that means that there's even more users if people are using a different account. I mean, the number of trips, I mean, this doesn't surprise me from looking how popular they are in other communities, 11,921. And the average trip distance is 2.5. You know, I large numbers, which did surprise me, and it did lead to some concerns around aesthetics, has already been identified. However, like, I mean, the feedback I'm getting actually, I mean, we're not getting a great deal of feedback. It's pretty minor, but the feedback I'm getting is actually they're not fast enough. In Edmonton, they can go 20 kilometers an hour, and we govern it at 15. I'm not saying I support that or not. I would not stand on it because I know where I would end up in the next 5 feet. But I mean, they're obviously popular, and I know that whenever you have something popular and well used, there's going to be people who take it too far and don't follow the rules. And so I have to say the first feedback I'm getting is optimistic, and if we can somehow clean up some of those minor or irritants, I'm not going to say minor, but irritants, then I'm pretty confident this is being pretty successful, and we should see how it goes going forward.
Good debate comments.
I can't debate. There was a question in there somewhere, Sean.
Do this.
Yeah.
So I'm not, like, I'm looking around the room. Are there any other questions for Sean, or kind of, are we considering a motion that's different from the recommended motion? I'm looking to,
Like the recommended motion.
okay, so Mayor Herron says she'll make the recommended motion. Any other discussion before we go to that? No, not saying anything. All right, Mayor Herron, you're up.
All right, that the report entitled e-scooter program update on the agenda of the February 14th, 22 meeting of the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee be received as information.
All right, thank you. I'll accept that. Anything, opening comments?
I'll ditto his debate. No, I thought, I mean, I didn't really even need this. I was fine to wait until the end of the entire pilot to see this data. I'm not surprised. There's always going to be some people that are opposed to anything new, but I did see a lot of people using them. I think it's an alternative form of transportation that we should be exploring, and pilot programs are a way to do it. So look forward to the end.
You. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too, I'm anxious to see what the experience is for the second summer in operation. I'm sensitive, though, to the point that Councillor Hughes made earlier around where they can drop them off and pick them up. I'm just wondering whether or not that could be feedback to the operating organizations to say, hey, this is the feedback that our community, we would hate to have to regulate it, but unless you regulate yourself, we're going to do it for you, type thing, because that may be feedback that they want to hear. So anyway, I'm certainly for receiving the information today, and we'll go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kellick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good report. Recognize it's a short window of usage from last year. Wasn't a full summer, so look forward to continuing the pilot for the full summer next or this coming summer, and getting some better data to make final decisions on. I too was concerned about where they get dropped off, seeing them in weird trail locations, front yards, but my sense is that that's, a user that just runs out of money. They run it on their card, and wherever it runs out, it just gets dropped. And it would be very hard to regulate saying somebody return it, because I've tried to pick them up, bring them down the trail to a more convenient spot, and they are heavy. And when they run out of money, the brake goes on, so you can't even pull them, and that makes it very difficult. But leave that up to the companies to, get after them in their 2-day window and pick them up. And maybe that will, if we can even speed that up, maybe that'll eliminate some of the concerns that residents have raised. So look forward to seeing the full year's usage report and data, and that's why we have the pilot. So I'm in support of this.
Right. I'm a little bit more hesitant than my colleagues here at committee. When I spoke to the youth committee about this, the feedback they gave, so this is, I think everyone is under 18 on the youth committee right now. They said it ruins the scenery. In St. Albert, they're used for fun, not for transportation. So it's not being used as an alternative to cars. They commented that the St. Albert is walkable and there's no need for scooters. They said they need better storage. They're ugly on the side of the trail. On helmets, they said that people don't wander around with helmets. And that was reflected in what I saw on the trails. And they comment for youth, paying for scooters doesn't make sense when they can use the bus for free year round. So those were the comments that came out of the youth committee. The comments that I kind of jotted down for today was having these scooters on the sidewalks and trails is extremely confusing, because privately owned scooters are only allowed on roads. So private scooters only allowed on roads. And then these shared scooters are only allowed on trails and sidewalks, and that creates a lot of confusion in the community and with Councillor Hughes by the looks of it. And that's been a struggle in the last year. The fact that they have to be removed after 2 days is obviously not happening. I know in my neighborhood, I would see one, on the side of the road in Aikinsdale for 5 days. And I don't think we should put it on our residents to have to call these companies every 2 days because there's been a scooter ditch outside of their house. So certainly I'm going to support receiving this for information, but Councillor Hughes, I'm interested to see what you're going to bring to council because I'm more hesitant about this program. So Mayor Hearn, to close.
Nothing to close.
All right, so I will call for the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the neighborhood plan approval process with Sajid.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to share my presentation and get started here.
Perfect, thank you.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see your slides as well on the side. I don't know if that's intentional.
I'm going to switch to full screen. Hopefully you can
Perfect.
just see. Bear with me here. It's a bit slow. How
That's
about now?
perfect. That's
Good?
great.
Okay, excellent. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sajid Safad. Today I'm here joined by my colleague, Lindsay Francis. Thank you for joining us. Today, planning is here to present to you the new two-tier ASP approval process as it relates to the neighborhood plan approval bylaw. Through the Green Tape Initiative, the City of St. Albert is looking at ways to streamline and find efficiencies in administrative procedures which impact land development and investment in the city. This project also stems from an Urban Development Institute request to explore efficiencies in the ASP approval process. Planning has been working with UDI for the past 18 months on a Green Tape initiative pertaining to a new ASP approval process. Planning has conducted research province-wide and within the region on many municipalities that have similar approval process and compared to St. Albert in terms of population and type of development. Every municipality applies the system slightly differently based on their policy framework, geographical and political context. Using lessons learned from neighboring municipalities, therein lies an opportunity to establish a new two-tier ASP process with the potential to improve and streamline the current ASP approval process. St. Albert's proposed new process closely resembles the process found in the city of Fort Saskatchewan and Parkland County. The proposed ASP process is also comparable to the following municipalities: City of Beaumont, Strathcona County, City of Edmonton, City of Red Deer. The purpose of the two-tier ASP approval process is to reduce overall approval timelines, reduce costs to the applicant in the long term, reduce staffing time to administer, reduce referrals for regionally insignificant matters to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, and to enable better overall alignment of city strategic goals and policy initiatives such as the new municipal development plan Flourish. The new two-tier ASP process will apply to the undeveloped areas in the city of St. Albert that do not already have an area structure plan. On this map, that would be the area shown in light gray. If there is an ASP in place, that will remain in effect. However, there is potential to include partially developed ASPs into the new process. The proposed process will enable better network land use infrastructure planning. Based on our research, we're proposing a new ASP approval process. The current single-tier ASP process is shown to the left. Under this process, all ASP applications, including major and minor amendments, must be approved by council and referred to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board. This process takes an average of 6 months to a year. The new two-tier process is shown to the right, where the proposed efficiency is realized by further breaking down the policy framework into an area structure plan and a neighborhood plan. These two plans will capture varying levels of detail. The proposed new process adds an additional step in the process. However, we believe this will reduce timelines for day-to-day decision-making. In the new process, the ASP will be a policy-based document that implements the policies of the Municipal Development Plan Flourish. It is envisioned that the new ASP will capture larger areas to enable broader network decision-making. The ASP will include policies pertaining to citywide and regional components of land use, transportation, and servicing networks. The ASP, as per the Municipal Government Act, will continue to be approved by council and referred to the EMRB for approval. The neighborhood plan will be a technical document conforming to the ASP that will contain detailed land uses, transportation, and servicing networks. The neighborhood plan will inform redistricting and subdivision applications. This plan must conform to the policies of the ASP and will be approved by the Director of Planning and Development. This process is expected to take approximately 3 months instead of the standard 6 months to a year. Many of the minor amendments that are currently approved by council are technical in nature and not of regional significance, and pertain to zoning and subdivision requirements. If a neighborhood plan does not conform to the ASP, an ASP amendment is required to be approved by council prior to the approval of the neighborhood plan. Applications for ASP and neighborhood plan submitted simultaneously can be reviewed concurrently to save time. The neighborhood plan can be approved upon council approval of the ASP. This table shows the difference between ASP and neighborhood plan in terms of level of detail captured and approval process. The ASP implements policies of the new MDP, whereas the neighborhood plan must conform to the ASP. The ASP covers all greenfield areas spanning multiple landowners, whereas the neighborhood plan must be undertaken by developers or landowners for each parcel or neighborhood. The ASP includes overall goals for density and land uses in keeping with EMRB growth direction, whereas the neighborhood plan includes detailed density, land use zoning, and do not require EMRB approval. The ASP includes major road and servicing networks based on the Transportation Master Plan and Utility Master Plan, whereas the neighborhood plan includes detailed local traffic and servicing study required for subdivision. The ASP conforms to the MDP and informs the creation of neighborhood plans, whereas the neighborhood plan informs the review and decisions on redistricting and subdivision applications. The ASP requires approval of EMRB and council, whereas the neighborhood plan can be approved by the Director of Planning and Development as a technical policy. These neighborhood plans will be approved by the Director of Planning and Development in accordance with council-approved ASPs. Here are some recent examples of technical and minor ASP amendments that were approved by council, but could have been expedited as a neighborhood plan amendment under the new process. Riverside ASP amendment in 2021 pertaining to the reduction in size for one stormwater management facility, as shown on the map in the Riverside neighborhood. The scope of this application is largely based on an engineering review due to the technical nature of the ASP amendment. Under the new process, this could be approved by the Director of Planning and Development. This application was accepted in February of 2021 and approved by Council in December of 2021, effectively taking 10 months to be processed through the Council approval. The election break for Council also caused additional delays for this application. Erin Ridge North ASP amendment was required as the ASP spoke to specific land use districts. The blue circle to the top left shows the proposed change in both the existing map to the left and the proposed map to the right. This application resulted in an overall increase in unit count, but a decrease in density, changing from high density to medium density designation, thereby requiring EMRB approval and Council approval. Under the new process, this would be covered in the neighborhood plan, hence subject to a quicker approval process. This application was accepted in August 2018 and approved by Council in February 2019, effectively taking 7 months to be processed through EMRB and Council approval. In Jensen Lakes, the ASP amendment proposed a change in the boundary and corresponding modification to land uses to the west of the ASP area, as circled in blue on both the existing map to the left and the proposed map to the right. This required EMRB approval. This required referral to EMRB, even though the proposed change was not significantly regionally significant. Under the new process, this adjustment could be approved at a neighborhood plan level and approved by the Director of Planning and Development. This application was accepted in November 2018 and approved by Council in January 2020, effectively taking 15 months to be processed through EMRB and Council approval. Administration is currently undertaking and reviewing the following pilot projects under the new process. The Northeast Area Structure Plan, which is a developer-led ASP shown on the top right on the map in front of you in the yellow highlight. The St. Albert West ASP is a city-led project shown on the bottom left, shown in green highlight. These projects are being reviewed to test the flexibility to make changes for details captured in the neighborhood plan. In summary, there are many merits to the two-tier ASP process. This project is in keeping with the city's Green Tape initiative and has been supported by UDI in multiple consultations throughout this project. Adding a neighborhood plan as a technical policy will improve and streamline the current ASP approval process. The primary efficiency would be realized through the reduced requirement for EMRB and Council approvals and enabling the Director of Planning and Development to make decisions on neighborhood plans. As a result of this project, a new two-tier ASP terms of reference has been compiled to capture the new process, which will be available online on the city's website for the development industry. The neighborhood plan being a detailed technical plan, it is anticipated that the volume of minor and technical amendments would be approved through the neighborhood plan. The reduced timelines would be realized by enabling the Director of Planning and Development to make decisions on neighborhood plans that are in keeping with Council's approved ASPs. As such, Bylaw X 2022 is required to establish the Director of Planning and Development to make decisions on neighborhood plans. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you go back to, I think it's slide 7. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought this up. No, 8. Yeah, this one right here. It's interesting you brought this to it because it sort of highlights the question that I had for you. So the neighborhood plan then would would deal with redistricting adjustments within an established ASP, and changes like that would not come to council. Am I hearing you correctly?
No.
Through the chair, redistricting
Sorry,
application.
could we just get, Mr. LaFleur is trying to answer that question. Did you want to add anything else, David?
Yeah, just very quickly, if I understood the question correctly, it was, could a neighborhood plan be used to effectively end around the requirement for council to do redistricting? The answer is emphatically no. Only council can redistrict.
Okay.
And Sajid, you may want to add some important glosses to that, but the basic answer is no. If a redistricting is required, that has to be done by council, nobody else.
Well, it's comforting to know. All right, so let me just go through my question here. So the area not in the circles, but the school park site in the sort of the northwest component, northeast component of the map there, that was a fairly intense discussion at council, and there was a lot of public input into what they wanted or what they didn't want in terms of changing that into a school site. Now, the vote aside, the question is, does that still come to council? And does the public have their debate before council on whether they wanted a park only or whether they wanted a school in that?
Through your chair, that is correct. So major decisions entailed in the ASP, such as location of school sites, major road networks, major servicing network, higher level land uses being residential, commercial, industrial, park sites and such, would still be a decision made by council. And that's all that would be entailed at the upper level ASP. Any details beyond that, such as the example that you were just talking about, a lot of those details, whether it's a lane product or whether there's a minor amendment to a storm pond, technical issues like that would be then downloaded to the neighborhood plan. So those would not appear in front of council.
Okay, I have a lot more comfort around what's happening here now. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Councillor Kellick.
Thank you. And just to follow on Councillor Broadhead's question, how is the public engaged, if in fact in this process at the neighborhood plan level, assuming this is adopted? Are neighbors still sent notices of a change, and is there any formal public engagement, or are they left out of the changes at a neighborhood level?
Through your chair, the idea for the neighborhood plan is to be a technical document, and hence the structure around what's in it, how it's approved, how we consult the public is it's sort of kept largely to a staff level. The notification would be posted on a website when an application is received, and essentially would give them the scope of what's being applied for and what's being considered in terms of amendments and been taken into account for consideration. There wouldn't be a formal notification like an ASP approval or a public hearing going through council would have.
And I just want to add a little bit onto that. The ASP itself would have all of the public engagement similar to what you're used to right now. This would be, the new neighborhood plan would be a lot more, again, more technical and more detailed. And then further to Councillor Broadhead's point, decisions regarding zoning would still come to council. So that would be tied, that shows the tie between the area structure plan, the neighborhood plan, and then the council approval with the land use district and zoning.
Okay.
And the rezoning would have a public hearing process.
Okay, in an area structure plan, there could be multiple developers owning land in an ASP. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So my question is then, if we had competing, if you will, neighborhood plans coming from two different developers within an ASP, one saying, oh, I want to move to higher density, but or the other group having higher density as well. What would be the process to decide an alignment between those two different developers at a neighborhood? Because we're going to break up an ASP into a whole bunch of smaller neighborhoods. We could get competing directions, if you will, from different developers. How would that be addressed?
Through you, Chair, with specific to your question about density in the neighborhood plan, all neighborhood plans would have to conform to the ASP. So the ASP would essentially set the big picture and set the minimums. And with regards to density, again, there would be minimums at the 40 DU per net hectare, and then the ability to go up as long as the infrastructure and the servicing capacity, roads and such are there to support it. Now, in terms of the consistency and sort of the connectivity between two developers, that's something, again, we would probably figure out a lot of those conflicting issues right at the ASP level, just because of the broader network would have to support what the neighborhood plan is proposing. And then as long as they meet the minimum set in the ASP, density wise, there is ability to go above and beyond. And like in terms of the ASP itself, what we have done through the new process too is there is ability for not only collaboration between the developers looking at the big picture at the ASP level, but now the city can write the ASP, so can developers. So there's options that way where we can undertake the ASP, but so can the private industry, depending on what the challenges with collaboration come up.
So at a high level, then, for example, in the picture that's up on the screen, the main road, collector road, would not change at an ASP level, but the neighborhood plans feeding into that could make tweaks, small tweaks to the road network that's connected. Is that what I'm understanding?
Through you, Chair, yes, generally. If I may correct you just on, maybe it's too specific to the collector, but the ASP would entail the boulevard, the crosstown, and up to the collector, and then the rest of the details being the local, the residential, the laneways, the walkways, that would be captured more in the neighborhood plan level.
And just final question then, that Edmonton has hundreds of, over 400 neighborhood plans. And how long have they had that system in place? And your feedback from probably talking to Edmonton, is it working successfully? Have they, is it working for them in a much bigger geographic area?
Through your Chair, we've looked at regional comparables, as I've mentioned, and provincially, and it so happened that I think St. Albert, as a major city, was the last of municipalities, both in the region and in the province, in terms of comparables, that was still working within the confines of a single tier process. So looking at that, I think we have greatly been, we've been inspired and used those as examples, because a lot of the network and big picture challenges that we've been facing, but also kind of technical issues, having to go through council and the time and effort that goes into it, where, if it's like this example in front of us that largely required an engineering review and could be approved at a staff level. I think those are the things that we learned from our research, and not only just Edmonton, but looking at other comparables. What we're proposing here today is probably slightly different than most of our regional partners, but that's because everybody applies the two-tier process a little bit differently. I think with what we have seen and based on the challenges we have had with our ASPs and local developers and such, this is sort of best suited in terms of how far we go in the ASP and what we leave for the neighborhood plan. In short, basically, I think the two-tier process is going to realize the efficiencies that we've been looking for through a lot of the council approvals that we have had in the recent past.
And just to completely answer your question, Councillor Kellick, I don't have an exact time when Edmonton started this. I've just recently pulled up a neighborhood plan that they've got, and it's dated 1991. So this has been a process that has been in effect in Edmonton for quite some time. I know Strathcona County has probably had it incorporated into their system for at least 10 plus years as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Right. Any other questions? Crickets in the room. Councillor Kellick, did you want to make the recommended motion?
Recommend the Community and Growth Infrastructure Standing Committee, CGIS, recommends to council that the report entitled Neighborhood Plan Approval Process dated February 14, 2022 be received as information.
Do you want to do the second one as well?
Second one, that the CGIS recommends that council instruct administration to bring to council meeting in March or April 2022 a bylaw and any other documents required council approval to implement the two-tiered ASP process described in the neighborhood area plan approval process report.
Nice. Thank you. I'll accept that. Did you have any opening comments?
I think it brings us in line with our neighboring communities. Any green tape reduction or red tape reduction to get us to green tape is always a good thing. I'm pleased to hear that community and citizen engagement is still a key part of it. And if this can speed our approval process along, and have council focus at the higher level key decisions at an ASP level, and that seems to make sense to me. So I look forward to the final report, and having Adrian will be very busy, I think.
Great. Councillor Broadhead or Mayor Heron? Go ahead, Mayor Heron.
I just keep thinking how much Ray Watkins would love this. I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't bring it forward as a suggestion last term, but yeah, this is good stuff.
Anything to add, Councillor Broadhead?
No, all good.
Okay. I'll just comment, any opportunity to get council out of the weeds is something I'm interested in hearing, especially when it streamlines processes for our partners in development. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the proposed bylaw looks like. Anything to close? Councillor Kellick?
Lots of work ahead to get the final bylaw drafted up, and look forward to seeing that in March or April.
Thanks. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. I think unless Ledge yells at me from behind, I think that might be it. So we are adjourned 2:32. Thanks, everyone.
Good job, Madam Chair. Are we convening again right away?